Hi everyone. Hi Veika. It's great to see you and to have you here. I'm very excited about our conversation. I was looking forward to talk about self-managed organizations. So I'm happy to present Veika, who is a leadership coach, a podcast host, expert in self-managed organizations. So please introduce yourself. Tell us about your journey and what you do.
Hi, Daria, and thank you for having me. Um, there's so much to tell about my journey and my interest in self-managed organizations, but in short, and I guess we will get into some nuances afterwards, I really am interested in understanding what's the future of work and how can organizations and organizational designs help and support this future. And one of the ways I've really dug into now very deeply is also having flatter organizations, having less hierarchy, giving more authority to all role holders and empower them. So that's where my main interest lies at the moment.
Great. I mean, I love future work is an amazing topic, and we can kind of see different ways it can evolve, like from flexible work, more flat organizations, more role-based and skill-based organizations versus the kind of structures and hierarchy.
Yeah.
When you say flat, like how flat? And is there
Yes.
any benchmark or rule on how best organizations should be structured?
Well, there's no like, let's say, some success formula, you do these 5 steps and you will be a greatest organization, a
Too bad,
self-managed
too
organization.
bad.
Um, but yes, you're right. I mean, there's a variety, right? It's like it's not black and white. So there's a lot of gray area in between. So you can have incremental changes and have less hierarchical organization, meaning that you still retain some layers and some form of authority, managerial authority, but you empower employees and role holders to have more say. So let's say it's called kind of like a participatory management, and there are radical versions of it which distribute authority to all role holders and sever the whole superior subordinate relationship altogether. So that there's a lot of different varieties you can find in the world how this has been solved. But there's no one right way. I mean, every organization, most of the organizations that have applied some sort of form of self-management have found their own way. So it's not like you take it from a shelf, a product or let's say an agile form of management or lean or however they are called, these different models and ways of leading. So self-management is pretty much like tailor-made for each organization, which is in a way good and at the same time really difficult because you cannot generalize.
Mhm. Can you like tell and explain what self-management is for let's say for a general manager in a corporation, Intel, I don't know, HP, Coca-Cola, any like so that they understand what is self-management.
Ultimately, what I consider as a self-managing organization is still an organization that will equalize the authority level of all role holders, meaning that you do not have the traditional hierarchy, authority hierarchy. Um, and each role holder will have their own remit, their own responsibilities and accountabilities. And within these areas, these boundaries, they have ultimate authority to decide how are they gonna actually achieve their purpose. So nobody will actually have a say how you will do your work. But obviously, there are then guardrails then if you will start to create problems, if you start create tensions, if conflicts arise, then you need to also address those very efficiently. But if you ask me, what is self-management in essence? In essence, it means distributing authority to each role holder so that within their own role boundaries, they have a quite large autonomy to decide how do they do their work.
Well, it sounds to me that in order to do that, you need to first understand those role boundaries, which
Yes.
is a rare case in a traditional organization when there is a manager, and the manager kind of distributes the tasks to their people
Yeah.
and gets some tasks from their manager. And those roles and borders are kind of vague, right?
Yes. So I do some research also in this area, not just consultation or coaching. And my research, as one of the outcomes, have been exactly what you've alluded to, which is that in order to have a efficient self-management in place, what you need first is to be really clear and transparent around role boundaries. So this is one of the first things you do, even though people with whom you start to define the roles, they say that they actually know what they're doing. We already know where the boundaries are. Why are we doing this? But when you dig deeper and you still go into details, they actually usually do not really know because it's a shifting area for them, depending on what they agree with their supervisor and team. But in self-managed organizations, you need to be extremely clear because otherwise you don't know where your jurisdiction starts and ends. So this is quite different from the traditional job description, which is in a way, I mean, you do job descriptions when you recruit, and then it lays in some, shelf or somewhere for years, and nobody looks at it until there's a change in the job or role. But people still do something meanwhile as well. But in self-managed organizations, you actually define the role like continuously. Whenever there is a new project, whenever there's a new task or something that will change the role a bit, you need to actually document it. And you need to be clear, not only for yourself, but also for your team and organization, where your boundaries of the role go.
Like I want to ask you, like really, like a case. Like let's say, how does it happens in a practical in life? So
Yeah.
we know that things, like you said, things constantly change, and what I've been doing today might not be the same as I'll be doing tomorrow, or there is something that just pops up. I don't know. I have an like I used to be a chief people officer, and I was leading like recruitment team, and we need to do an event like career fair or something like that,
Yeah.
which is not their direct responsibility, but there's no one else to do that.
Yeah.
So in self-managed organization, how those like kind of pop-up tasks or changed responsibilities, how they should be addressed.
Yes. I can talk about holacracy, which is a specific model for self-managed organizations where I'm most like comfortable and competent in. Um, what happens is when there's a task that is in the gray area, meaning that nobody actually has this written or there's not a consensus on whose role it will belong to. So what happens is if it's a one-time event, it's just a single act, single project, single thing to do that doesn't have a recurrence in the future, then it's easy. I mean, it's just an agreement. Whose competence this falls into and who is able to do it. And this is an agreement. It's. I mean, just someone has to pick it up, right? If it's a recurrent issue or task, then we need to actually also change the role boundaries and agree that, okay, this recurrent action will be a part of this role and role description. So there's a governance process how to do that, which is quite specific and detailed. So you also ask for objections, for example, if someone is against it and for what reason, and how can we then integrate these objections into the final role description. But in essence, if it's a recurrent action, then we need to somehow also integrate in someone's role description. But if it's a one-time topic, then I mean, it doesn't even have to be discussed in the team meeting. It can be just agreed between people or someone. Even there is an option that someone will just take it up. I mean, it's an individual initiative. If I see that, I don't know, let's make it really simple. Like if I see that there is dirty dishes in the sink, I mean, we don't need to agree who is gonna wash them, right? I mean, I'm just gonna go and wash them, which is an individual initiative in holacracy. But if I am gonna wash the dishes every day, and this is part of my role, then we need to also, describe this within my role description.
Mhm.
If
You
that makes
mentioned,
sense.
yeah, you mentioned holacracy. Well, what is it?
Well, holacracy is just one model of self-managing organizations. Um, it's founded by Brian Robertson, who is American entrepreneur and initially a software developer who was very interested in finding different alternative forms of organization to the traditional hierarchy. And he started to experiment with different practices within his own firm and came up at the end, I mean, after 10 years of experimenting with whatever we call now holacracy. And there's a book, I think it was released or published 2015, so almost like 10 years ago. A small book. I mean, it's a short book. I think it's about 100 or 150 pages that delineates the whole kind of mindset practices, the history and also the opportunities and practical implications. So whoever is interested, then this is available.
Do you
But
know?
yeah, okay, what
Yeah.
is holacracy? So initially, it's basically a radical form of distributing authority. And maybe what makes it different from all other forms of self-managing organizations is that it's constitution-based governance system. So there's a constitution, like we have a constitution in our you know in our country. So holacracy also has a constitution, which outlines the basic rules of the game in a way, that we are gonna play if we adhere to holacracy, and it will allow us to distribute authority and allow us to then process all the operational and governance issues that pop up. So, in a nutshell,
Okay.
it's a constitution-based self-managing model of organizations.
Are there no managers at all there? Or still there was some?
There's no managers in traditional sense, even though there are teams which are called circles, like a more kind of a fancy word of a circle. And there are circle leads, you
Mm.
call them circle leads. These are default roles, but they don't have the same authority as traditional managers. The difference is that, well, basically they cannot intervene in how do you actually perform your role. So they have no authority in your remit. They do have authority over who is gonna be assigned to a role. And they also have authority to withdraw you from a role. But these can be also changed if the team or the circle decides to do so. So it can be a collective decision as well. But in constitution, the circle lead has this authority. Another thing that circle lead has as its role authority is if there are some conflicts of priorities within the circle. So they can actually set priorities as well. Like, for example, if we have like 10 different things we need to do at the same time, then they are the ones who look at the large picture and say, hey, let's take these as our first priorities. And there are other nuances as well, but basically, yeah, there are circle leads. But the main task of them is not to intervene in anyone's role performance or role execution, but help them, help the circle to achieve its objective. And the circle lead role takes up about 10%, maybe even less, of your overall time working in the organization. So it's a small role. So in holacracy, there can be many roles that you fulfill. So there can be around, usually it's about 3 to 7 roles that each person can fulfill. So circle lead is just one of them.
Interesting. What are the companies? Do you know companies that use it, that use holacracy?
Yes, if you go to actually holacracy, I think it's holacracy.org. It's a webpage. There is a list of organizations that have adopted holacracy, and there are hundreds of them all over the world. You can check out. You can check out who are in Israel, who are, I don't know, in different countries. There are companies from all over the world, and I think the hub of holacracy, let's say the most populated country that has per capita, let's say, has the most amount of holacracy powered organizations. I think it's Netherlands, if I'm not mistaken. So Netherlands is most kind of like uh, I don't know how to say, like the
Self-managed.
culture is most kind of receptive to this kind of leadership.
Do you know if Zappos still use it?
That's a good question. I actually had a call, like private call with the guy. I think his name was John Bunch, if I'm not mistaken, who helped Tony Schiech, who was the CEO, to implement it in Zappos. So he was the project manager, in a way, project manager of implementing holacracy. But it was about 1.5 years ago. And he said that they still use holacracy, but not solely holacracy, because it does not really address all the different leadership topics that need to be addressed. So they have also integrated other different models to complement with holacracy. But if you nowadays look at their webpage, there's nowhere mention of holacracy. Before there was, now there's not, and I'm not sure. I mean, they might also, have rolled back. I don't know. The recent developments, I have no idea.
It looks like they kind of more not that don't have that prominent culture that they used to have, and kind of that vocal about their
Yes.
culture. It's been a bit quiet since
I
they
think
were
the previous
quiet. Yeah,
CEO, the Tony Schiech, I believe that
she,
means
yeah.
she or something like that. He was I mean, it was his child and
Hmm.
his project or his kind of like initiative. And when he passed away, I think, you know,
Yeah.
it might lose its energy, its intensity. But I'm not sure. Yeah.
All right. So my next question is about decision making. So let's say no one has like hierarchical authority. How decisions are made? How like strategic decisions are made?
hmm
Yeah.
hmm Okay, so there's also like different levels of decisions, right? So if we're talking about role-based decisions, it's basically we can say that each role holder is a CEO of his or her own remit. So basically, If the decision has to be made, how do I, within my role, achieve a certain objective, then I have a full authority to decide on my own, to the best of my ability and to the best of my knowledge. So it's in a way like autocracy within my role. I'm an autocrat. I'm a dictator within my role. So it's if you look at the organization, then it's a multitude of different dictators put together, which is very interesting in a way. But if you're talking about the decisions that will change my role boundaries, as we're talking about governance, right? This is a governance issue. It's not any more operational issue. It's a governance issue. Then I have to. This decision has to be made by circle, within circle. So I cannot change my role myself. Let's say I want to expand the boundary of my role. I cannot do that alone. So this is an area where the decision is made within governance meeting. And as I told, I mean, there's a very specific process to that. And everyone not even has an opportunity, but has obligation to make an opinion or to voice their concerns if there are any. And then we integrate these objections into the final version of the governance decision. Now, if we go even further, let's say now we're going away from a circle, right? It's not about like role boundaries, but it's a strategy or vision or I don't know, like a goal of an organization itself. Then there are different options how these have been handled. One option is that you have a circle. So you basically have a team whose purpose is to mandate a vision. So you have a specific circle only for that, to make the process of, let's say, vision creation and goal setting as its priority. So it's like a leadership role that has been assigned to a specific team, right? Or there can be also an option that if you look at the circle, anchor circle, it's called anchor circle, which is a general company circle. I can see from your eyes like what anchor.
Yeah.
So these circles are also, as you can imagine, like at different levels, because in holacracy there is still a hierarchy of purposes. There's no hierarchy of authority, but there's a hierarchy of purposes. Otherwise, there's no coordination and alignment, right? So circles are in a way like how you call it, like matryoshka, like they go within it themselves, like I don't know what's in English word for that, but they are like they're like super circles and sub circles within themselves.
So each
And
circle has some circles within, and each circle has a kind of parent circle, like an anchor circle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And anchor circle is the largest circle that encompasses all other circles.
Okay.
So it's basically, you can imagine it as a kind of like the most abstract, most the organization wide circle, and you can have there a role that is dedicated to vision creation and goal setting. So this is one way how you set the strategy. Obviously, this person is not gonna, or these persons are not gonna do it just alone, but it's their purpose and their circle's goal or aim to come up with the process. How do we actually set the goals within the organization, and how do we set the vision? So they obviously have everyone else as well as a part of this process, but there's someone who is responsible for that, if that makes sense now.
What I'm curious about is how, like, the notion of teams, like how teams show up. And I'll tell you like what I mean by that. So I'm writing a book about self-sufficient teams, which is not exactly self-managed teams. but kind of teams that are more independent, they don't need to go to their leader for every decision making, for every question, for every problem. They're fully capable of operating on their own, communicating with stakeholders, delivering value. And a great team is a team that has a shared purpose, interdependence, and yes, well, clear roles and boundaries of the team. So from what I'm hearing in holacracy, there is not so much of this interdependence because everyone has, like, I have my role and I'm a king of my role and I can fully manage my role. But sometimes you are interdependent. It's not just you adding up sums of each individual contributions. You need to collaborate and come up with something together. So how does it happen in self-managed in holacracy?
Yes, but I don't see any like how you call it, like you can be both. You can be autonomous role holder, and you can be someone collaborating with others at the same time. So I don't see them as mutually exclusive. Maybe I emphasized the part that you are free to decide, but you are free to decide up to a point that you actually help the whole team or the circle to achieve its purpose. So if your interests are not aligned with the interest of a team or circle, obviously there will be conflicts and tensions. And this is something that is addressed in every meeting as well. So basically, one central theme in holacracy is tensions. It's called tensions. And tension is something that keeps you from achieving the purpose of the role. So you feel it in your body. All meetings start with the question like, what do you need? What are the tensions that hold you back from achieving your goal? And then the meeting agenda will be based upon these tensions. And each role holder will tell what is the most important tensions that he or she feels at the moment. And then they start to solve those tensions one by one. So this is the meeting. And if you are within a chain of value creation and you're dependent or interdependent with others, one of the common ways what actually keeps you from achieving your goal is that you don't get an input from other role holders that you need in order to do your work if you are interdependent collaborator. So this is a tension immediately. So we have to resolve it. So this is part of this process of resolving tensions.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I mean, you kind of don't wait till it's a conflict situation,
No, no,
but you
no.
speak it up right away and you solve it as soon as you feel it. And
And you don't need.
I mean, that's a great approach. Everyone should have that. Let's discuss what holds you from reaching your goals.
And the thing is, you don't need a meeting for that. If you are two persons holding two roles that are interdependent, I mean, I can just go or call you or go and see you in person and discuss whatever I need, and then let's agree on how do we solve this. If you cannot solve it by yourselves, you bring it to the meeting, right? The meeting, you don't go to your manager in a traditional, but you bring it to the meeting then. And the meeting is the place where you actually solve it together. I mean, usually it is solvable. In some cases, obviously, conflict will arise, and there is difficulties that are not so easily handled. But anyway, I mean, there's always this option of bringing the tensions to the table. Not even option, but it's a requirement. Otherwise, you cannot do your work. I mean, you have to. Nobody will save you. I mean, one thing in holacracy is very clear. There's no manager who is gonna save you. I mean, if you don't, if you cannot um, solve your own problems, your own tensions with other team members, then there's no one who will help you. And that is both, it creates a certain kind of frankness and directness and straightforwardness. So kind of like transparency. but it also is quite difficult for some people because they have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, raising uncomfortable issues. Um, but this is, I think, something that holacracy is really good at. Creating transparency and also creating, I think, like safety in a way that that all the different topics, even the most uncomfortable ones, need to be discussed. Otherwise, they will not be solved. I mean, there's no other way.
I like it. And I like the way that, I mean, you need to manage your own work, you need to manage your own career. Your managers doesn't have to kind of take you and lead you through all the
There's no one.
career
I mean, there's no
steps.
one.
It's no, right? Because now leaders are so and managers so overloaded. They're kind of squeezed between the demands from top and demands from the bottom. Like, people motivate me, engage me, make me feel happy at work. It's your obligation. You're a leader, and all the LinkedIn is kind of filled in with leaders. You need to do this, and leaders you need to do that. And okay, people, we can do that. We can do that ourselves. We can take control of our career and move it forward.
And the good thing about having multiple roles is that even if you lose one role or you finish one role, you don't have to leave the organization. I mean, you're still part of the organization with other roles, and you can take up different roles within different teams. I mean, it's not in one team. So I think it's a really nice thing about holacracy is that you get much larger view of the organization, and not just view, but like the sense of what does it mean to work in different departments, different teams. Obviously, there is a backlash. You have to be really good at managing yourself and your energy and time because nobody will tell you what to do right now. But if you have like 5 to 7 different roles, you have to somehow manage your time. And this is difficult if you're not used to it. Um, but the good thing is that you're part of a much larger community within the organization.
Mhm. And that kind of leads to the next question. What are the risks of self-managed organizations? What organizations should never, ever be self-managed?
There's no company that never ever should be self-managing. Um, there are many risks. I mean, it sounds I'm making a very positive picture of the whole thing, but there are so many obstacles and barriers to actually efficiently adopting self-management. It's very difficult, and in practice, there are I think there are more failures than successes. I can tell you. Um, and there are so many different reasons how it can fail. One thing is that we are so conditioned, and I think this is the most important reason, is that we have conditioned throughout our life of being in a hierarchy. So think about, I mean, the relationships within the family starting as a child. There's a hierarchy there. I mean, there's authority difference. Then you go to the kindergarten. There's the teacher. I mean, it's a hierarchy again. Everybody will tell you where you stand and where am I, and it's a difference. Then you go to school, the same thing. You know, you go university, you go to workplace. It's an endless row of different hierarchies. And when you are already adult, you are so much ingrained with this mindset and this way of just being in the world that it's so difficult to actually change this. So I think the most important obstacle is the whole way how the society has been built up.
Mhm.
And it's possible to change this also as an adult, but it's so difficult. It's so easy to revert back to the hierarchical kind of relationships. And some people actually they say openly, I have I know I have this experience. when we try to change over to holacracy in one organization, and there are people who openly say that this is not for me. I don't want this. I cannot see myself within this environment, and they leave. And I have to be comfortable with that. That some people feel that this is not for them, for whatever reason. Even if the psychology says that all people have this innate human need of autonomy, that they really actually want to feel that they are behind the wheel, that they are in charge of their life. There are people who actually say, no, I don't want this. This is not for me.
Yeah, the scale is too much. I mean, just this big, yeah, it
Yes, it
can be
scares, and
autonomous.
it is scary because suddenly you are alone. I mean, if we are talking about CEOs are alone at the top, right? We're saying that they are alone, right? It's lonely at the top. I mean, then every role holder, in essence, existentially are alone in their role because they have the full authority, not just have, but have responsibility to actually make those decisions. And it's not easy.
All right, we started our conversation with the future work. So my final question is, how do you think organizations or maybe people need to change to be ready for the future work?
Yes, yes. Um, I think if you look at the trends within the society, I mean, you can see the generational differences also. More and more youngsters think more about the meaning of work, not just let's have a paycheck and do whatever is needed to get more money or to get sufficient living. But what they want is to leave some kind of a legacy behind them, or at least, contribute to something meaningful. So I think this is one thing that is a future, even stronger trend, that we have to think about the values that the organization stands for and what is the larger picture that it contributes to. So this is one thing. Another thing definitely is that all these you know trends of information overload. I mean, there's data pouring in all the time, so you have to have so much capacity to drive through the different data points to make decisions. That I think this is an area where we have to look at, like, how do we make it so easy for people to digest all the data that's coming in our way within their, even within their roles. I mean, like, how do you manage this? This is very difficult. And then not only to be aware of this new information, but actually use it for making decisions efficiently.
Mhm.
I think also that all these elements of self-management have to be taken seriously within organizations. I think the future is not like a big bang changeover to self-management, but certain elements, as you told, also like self-sufficient teams, right? I mean, it's not about getting rid of managers, but it can be at first, for example, just giving more authority, empowering people more within their own roles. And if they don't handle this very well, then the manager will step in. So giving them more and more responsibility and freedom within their roles. And I think this is inevitable because there's no manager who is able to decide on behalf of a role holder. Like, maybe if you are a frontline, let's say like the kind of like in a supervisory role within the frontline employees, you are also very competent within whatever they do, then you might be the smartest person within that team. But if you go higher in the management layers and higher in hierarchy, the higher you go, the less you actually know about the different areas of this particular company. And you have to be trustworthy. Not trustworthy, but like you have to trust the people to make the decisions. So you have to give them enough authority.
Mhm. Thanks, Fake. I love it. I mean, just step by step, empowering people, maybe teaching them and coaching them how to make decisions on their own, how to be more autonomous, and kind of transferring this power from one person holding everything at the top to kind of people who actually do the job.
Yes, and
Amazing.
also,
Yeah.
if you think about parenting a child, like, you know, what do you want? I mean, at the end of the day, what you want is that the child would be independent of you, like that they could actually manage their own life successfully without being really dependent on the parents, right? I mean, this is the ultimate goal. You want to see your children to succeed, right? I think it's the same thing with a team. You know, as a manager, what do you want is you want to uh, grow and develop the team in a way that you all the time diminish the dependency on you, so that at one point you can say that I will go for 3 months to, I don't know, Mediterranean Sea to enjoy, and I know that everything will be in order and handled well. I don't have to be there. I don't have to like all the time intervene. Isn't
Cool.
it so?
Yeah. Well, I want them to be my babies all the time.
Okay, very good.
But yeah, I'm like, I absolutely understand what you mean. Yeah, we want them to
Yeah,
succeed and be independent and handle issues on their own,
exactly,
make their own
exactly.
mistakes, learn their own thing. True.
Yes, yes.
Well, thank you so much, Baker. It's an amazing conversation. I learned so much. How people can learn more about you and from you, how they can reach out to you. What's the best way for them to do that?
If you just type in Veiko Valkiainen, which is a very difficult name, I know, but even copy paste from this podcast or this talk, and there are different like web pages, my own web page, my podcast as you mentioned at the start. I also have LinkedIn and Facebook and other social media, so you will find me under this my name.
Cool. And anyway, uh, there's a link to your LinkedIn post and to your podcast in the
Awesome.
comments to this video. So reach out to Baker to learn about self-managed and create amazing teams and organizations that are empowered and make decisions on their own. That's amazing. All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Daria.
Okay.
And
Take care.
all
Take
the
care.
best to you as well. Yeah, thank you.